Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the webinar Back to Business, the Revival After Lockdown. On behalf of ICI, SSM and CropSy, we welcome everybody to webinar on the topic Partial Lifting of Lockdown, Resuming Business Activities. We have distinguished speakers, Captain Gary Singh from IIRIS Consulting, Mr. Firoz Zia Hussain from Delhi Very, Mr. Anil Puri from APS Group, and Colonel Vineet Sahgal from Capt. We welcome you to the webinar, and I would like to invite now our first speaker, Captain Gary, to deliver his session.
Thank you so much, sir. It is a privilege and a very proud honor to be part of such a session where I can already see in the list of attendees as well as the list of panel speakers, it's the industry stalwarts which are here. So this will be very, very useful and fruitful discussion, I'm sure. And at the same time, I will also like to congratulate the governing body for putting this very pertinent topic ahead, because after all, we need to think about how do we finally get going. And when we look at the get going stage, there are two crucial things which immediately come to my mind. One, what all impacts will be there that we need to finally mitigate to get back to business. And number two, as far as these impacts are concerned, whether they will be only tactical level linked to safety, or they can actually mean some other connotations of impact as well. So considering that as a backdrop, I will like to use a few slides to highlight my point here, and very quickly we'd like to put it up for view, and a quick confirmation from my fellow speakers who have the mic available unmuted, if you can see the screen now.
We can see it. We can see it.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. So not putting so much of an effort of where this will stand in terms of medical, because neither I'm a doctor nor I'll be able to make a very perfect assessment in terms of where the medical situation lies. I would really like to go down directly to yes, where the overall situation, including bit of medical and the economy and the overall geopolitical situation and other aspects attached to it. Well, everybody is talking about the impacts right now. I would like to put forth a humble submission that there is nobody right now in any position to gauge what will be the final impact, because the situation is so dynamic that some of the top organizations in the world made some assessment in the morning, and by evening they thought this can be more grave. Similar is the situation that after 3-4 days and every 1 week, the overall impact of economy seems to be misjudged, and people are further bringing it down in terms of whether the economic impact on India, Asia, or the globe. So as of now, we'd like to quickly put up some points that what are the determinants which are impacting and how will they impact, which will help us to finally gauge that how it will impact our industry sector, our economy as a country, or the overall global situation. Well, one thing is very clear, that the impact will be directly proportional to the time. Higher the amount of time spent by coronavirus in a country, higher will be the impact on life safety as well as economy, which means more life loss, more patients, and at the same time economy further sliding down. So sooner you save yourself, better it is. Also a direct connotation to severity. Now this is to be understood here, that where the corona has impacted or where the maximum impact has gone. Is it on life? Is it on technology, on innovation, something which was happening? So if you compare yourself in a global environment, we look far better off, because the total infections or deaths per million are extremely low. Similarly, if you compare Italy, Spain, or USA with China in terms of infection per million or death per million. They actually crossed China at least 2 to 3 weeks back rather now. So a large part of population is impacted, and the severity level in Italy is far more grave than China by any chance. Same as Spain. Even Germany has got far more severe sort of a situation to handle than China. How your company responds, yes, it will play a major role in terms of whether the company promoters management was immediate to react saying, oh, we're shutting down, or they had the resiliency, they had funds. That will also dictate one very common feature in terms of how the overall scenario will play out. Type of industry, yes, if you were part of aviation, if you're part of hotel, you immediately got huge impact. If you're part of medical, possibly you got an impact that you still cannot manage the situation because the number of patients you receive. Government recovery measure, this will be the most critical component for any industry, for any single business, for any single individual. The new world which will be defined post the lockdowns and the post-corona situation is going to be a very new selfish world when every country will think for themselves in the new arena. Some governments which are able to project themselves better, align themselves better, will do help their country to be in a good situation, and similarly help the internal businesses better, will help those businesses to rise to those global occasions. I also very seriously feel that post the lockdowns and corona situation, India is going to sit on a huge economic opportunity to rise further globally. But again, it will really depend upon how government plays internationally and locally. International business, both sides, if you had your supply chains of getting something towards the downstream or supplying towards your client and you were exporter to Europe or other places, the chances of you getting impacted more than others. Similarly, if you were not only linked with the physical export of goods, whether even as a services, trading, you were holding huge number of shares in US companies, everything in terms of international dependency will also play a different role altogether. So what are these determinants telling us? There are some immediate impacts which are coming up. Well, I coined this term demand trauma, and what I want to mention by it is that all of a sudden the demand of your goods, service can change very, very drastically in huge numbers. Like I mentioned, if you're a hotel, your demand can go towards zero. If you are a PP equipment or sanitizer supply, your demand can reach to 2000% level, which you cannot even fulfill. But what will happen? This demand trauma is very soon, with over a period of time, will subside. And the new demand, which will be based on necessity, essentials, rather than luxury. So that is going to be the move out of demand trauma. We already mentioned about the supply chain. It is going to be severely impacted. Globally, it is already seen. Some of the countries have more than 30% dependency on international supply chain. They are obviously facing more impact than other countries. Resiliency, this is going to be the buzzword for very long time now. If you did not had a resilient business which could take the shock of these impacts, the chances is the next impact, the survival is going to be low. The survival will not only be challenged in terms of life safety, it's also going to be a challenge in terms of the company, whether they survive for long or not. Cash flow already deteriorating, less availability of capital is going to be an immediate challenge, and social unrest. We already saw even in India a challenging situation of the labor migrants. We've already seen in Indonesia and Malaysia a challenging situation of social unrest for need of the basic amenities. And we have also seen social unrest even in developing countries like Germany and USA, where the people have come on street saying, I don't want lockdown, give me back my freedom. So these are very immediate impact already visible, but there are going to be long-term impacts. There are going to be impacts which need to be played very well to be mitigated, to be managed to advantage of the respective countries. Well, it is obvious the geopolitical realignment will take place. Germany has already sent huge amount of feelers as well as messages to China about what they did. Japan government, one of the first one, openly said $2.2 billion put aside for Japanese companies to move production out of China. USA has very clearly blamed China and WHO for what's happening. Apart from China in the scenario, even countries in the European Union, they have started a soft allegation on each other for not able to support during time of crisis. Italy said clearly to France and Germany, you didn't give me PP equipment and you didn't give me other supplies when I needed the most because you kept it for yourself. So even European Union and a lot of other alignments are facing challenges. The governments have adopted a social welfare measures. This will continue for long. The possibility of governments making some kind of law around this, making the corporate responsible to take care of social measure. For example, they can say every corporate should have capability to pay their employees for 3 months if such a pandemic comes up. All corporates may run to buy insurances, create additional reserves. So things are those. So new regulations, social welfare, these are going to be some of the long-term impacts. The financial impacts in terms of long-term, a lot of people were discussing whether there'll be recession or not. Now it is confirmed there is already recession. And during this recession, the capital is going to be a huge, difficult commodity to get. So that's how you will find a lot of businesses, whether new or old, will start looking towards technology and innovation for regular growth and progress and further scaling up of business. The cost of business is likely to go up and the customer rate to pay price is likely to go down. So this is going to be a double whammy which everybody has to face. As far as India is concerned, I think even before this corona situation, our banks were really in a very difficult condition. The non-performing assets were in huge numbers. Combining with what's happening due to corona, I think we are going to be on really a receiving end. We need to be well prepared, and a mixture of government and corporate strategies have to come in together to come out of this situation. Very quickly, an impact in terms of operational supply chain. We mentioned some companies may not exist. There is going to be a huge number of conflict. I personally believe we are going to enter one of the conflict zones which is going to be the toughest for the complete global earth history. This may be full of a lot of crimes, losses, commercial dispute, merger acquisitions, and very, very predatory policies from most of the governments as well as the corporate. So if you're putting some reserve, put your reserves separately for your litigation and conflict to be managed. Otherwise, this is also a possible opportunity, not an opportunity, possible impact in 6, 12, 18, 24 months that can impact the companies very, very adversely. Last but not the least, some of the cultural impacts, which also means the way we work. We've already seen situation of working from home becoming a reality for a lot of sectors. Yes, the industrial and manufacturing cannot adopt to it, but wherever else applicable. Well, Facebook is one company which has already paid its employees to create office environment at home. And what is happening out of this work from home is, well, corporate may be able to live with limited real estate, enjoy certain savings. They don't have to maintain the real estate and provide all the services of transport and food at office, so it's a saving. The employees might be happy not spending 2 hours on every day on road, saving time for their family. And the overall situation in terms of global environmental concerns will be better because less fuel will be used and everything else. But yes, this will have a negative impact on all the real estate projects. It'll have a negative impact on all the transportation vendors which have been working. So those are likely to be impacts. Lifestyle changes, yes, I think the good old habit of India doing savings and not spending on your credit card which you're going to earn next month is likely to come back. And I seriously believe even some of the developed countries and the citizens there will be thinking about keeping some reserve for such rainy days. Move from globalization to localization, highly, highly likely. People will like to keep at least certain reserves, percentage stuff which can be done locally. So this is another long-term impact likely to be played. And obviously it's important for us as risk professionals to help our industry, help our companies that we work, help our industry bodies, the government, to raise some of the possible risk scenarios in front of us, to understand what impacts it can bring in, and collectively as a country, move forward and mitigate these impacts to the advantage of India, to the advantage of industry, and to advantage of all the citizens which are working. So maybe I'm going to take a pause here because I've taken possibly a couple of minutes more than I should have, and pass on to the next speaker and some of the other aspects which were linked to how these impacts will flow up and how to mitigate. Maybe take it up a little later. Thank you so much, host.
Thank you so much for your lovely deliberations. Now I'll request our next speaker to take on. Next speaker is Mr. Feroz. Please.
Start this. And start. Can you just yeah, start my video? Okay. Thank you very much, Captain Tyagi. It's really a pleasure to be able to speak on the deliberations on the post-lockdown scenario. Before I get to the post-lockdown scenario, I would like to describe in practicality how the lockdown happened and how it affected Delivery Logistics. Delivery Private Limited is basically a logistics company into FTL, LTL, supplying various e-commerce goods and also doing trucking pan-India. On the day of the lockdown announcement, we had 42,000 employees working across 3,200 warehouses all over India. We had about 60 crores in hard cash lying in various centers, which is basically the cash on delivery, which we collect and gets deposited the next day by CMS and such other agencies. We had about 452 crores worth of goods in transit because we pick up goods which has to be delivered to various consignees on particular dates based on whatever is the agreed dates and timelines. We had around anywhere between around 29 to 30 lakhs of shipments lying across 3,200 centers. And this is all over, right from Andaman Nicobar up to Jammu Kashmir to all the northeastern states. Now, the moment this was announced, what does it mean? Basically, all the employees cannot go to work. None of us can get to our warehouses, so nothing can move. So that was absolutely like a shocking sort of thing which happened, and we decided that we must take the challenge head on and work on it to be able to give some value back to the society, not just give some value back to society, but also to start up the whole logistics network. The good decisions that we had taken, because this was not something which was unforeseen. I mean, it was happening for the last 1 month. They were happening in Wuhan, etc., and other places. So there was information trickling in that something like this, the world over, some of the places are getting locked down. So what we had done is we had taken a conscious decision that we will send masks to all our centers. We will send thermal scanners to all our centers, and we will train the guards to do checking, frisking at all the warehouses, contactless methodologies. So those are the 2-3 things which we had implemented, and that really helped us the moment lockdown was announced, because we were already ready with the masks at every center. We were already ready with the thermal scanners, which was what was required. The next thing was that because most of our clientele was primarily non-food, non-pharma. So that's when we realized that right now the need of the hour is masks and sanitizers and the various medicines. Now here, when you stop a network suddenly and you have a huge amount of tonnage flowing through, you have 6,000 trucks flowing through, and you suddenly stop it and say, okay, you just need to transport 1 ton from Chennai, 1 ton of masks or 1 ton of sanitizer from Chennai to Delhi or Chennai to Arunachal Pradesh or something like that. So then you find that the network cannot, because it all moves through a hubs and spoke methodology. So what we decided is that that's probably the best decision that we took. We said that if we are going to accept even one box of PPE kits, which has to be delivered from anywhere from Guwahati to Chennai or Chennai to Srinagar, we will definitely do that, even if the truck has to travel all the way just with 1 box. So that's how we started the wheel, and most of the people were really shocked. How come delivery is able to deliver, pick up and deliver when none of the other companies or none of the other corporates are at all moving goods? But we said that we're going to start the chain, and the moment we did that, we found that a lot more companies immediately came to us and that they also need the mask and the PPE used to be delivered and things like that. That's how it started. And then we had a whole group of pharma companies which wanted their supply chain raw materials all the way coming from various countries of the globe, and they wanted help in that. So that's how we were able to, within something like, so that on the day of the lockdown, we finally, from 18,000 pin codes, we became 0. But the second day, third day, fourth day, we finally, within the 5 days of the lockdown, we reached something like 15,000 plus pin codes. So that's where we were able to, I mean, really by a very focused approach on business risk and continuity, we were able to come back on track and start moving things. I think where the lockdown was very confusing as far as the way it was implemented was because initially there was things like police passes. Then from there it shifted to collector issuing passes. Then it became some e-passes. Some sites suddenly came up every day. You had a new site coming which used to crash the moment you start applying into it. So you had the e-pass system. Then you had various municipalities also starting issuing passes themselves. Of course, now towards the end, what they're doing is most of the states have now migrated to a bulk e-pass upload system, which also has various issues because most of the where the people are really required, you don't get the passes, and somewhere else where it's there, you have excess of passes. So that's how we probably worked on the passes. Most important was the manpower. What we did was to be able to motivate all our people by having a daily Facebook conversation with across the company, a Facebook work conversation with across the company, so that we explain to them that this is a matter of safety for you, but still this is a national duty. This is a national privilege which we've got as a part of the logistics supply chain, which is into medicines, masks, and sanitizers, and that's why we have to do it. And which really motivated. We had stories of people traveling. There was one guy who bicycled something like almost a few hundred kilometers and reached the office. There was another guy who took, I think, 5 truck hops and took basically piggybacking on various trucks, and then managed to reach Delhi to his workplace. So these are some of the motivational which we used to talk about on the various Facebook conversations, which really made the people to understand that delivery is here in the long run. And we told them we are not here to cut any salaries. We're not here to cut the manpower. We want to be able to get over the Corona crisis and become a winner, achieve things. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Feroz. It was highly motivating, and how business continuity has to be continued. That's a big lesson which you have given, that despite the risk, the delivery was to the point, perfect, meeting the expectations. Now, cash handling and safe ATM operations. During all calamity to routine time, we need cash, and cash management bears a very, very important thing even during the current COVID lockdown. Mr. Anil Puri, APS Group, has not been able to join, but we are fortunate enough to have Colonel Malhan, who will be covering the detail on cash handling and safe ATM operations on behalf of Colonel Anil Puri. Colonel Naresh, sir, please.
Good evening. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, right. So I would say this cash handling is a very, very sensitive and risk-prone operations, because besides the real reason is that cash is such a tempting thing to whack that when you're handling cash, everybody at some stage or the other can get tempted to sort of remove cash and make good and take advantage of the situation. So at every single moment, the probability of somebody trying to sort of get the better of the system is always there. And hence, when you handle cash, the entire process has to be have a very inbuilt accountability at every stage. There have to be 4, everything has to be recorded, moved, traced, tracked, and accounted for. So the process is very, very well defined. Similarly, when you move cash from one location to the other in a secured cash van, even there, it's a very tempting target. You see, all these antisocial elements would really do the very best to sort of to say. So how you would cash from place A to B, which route you would take, is all very process. And similarly, ATMs, because there the cash actually has to be loaded and accounted for, also has a very well-defined process which cannot be altered come what may. So when you're moving under a process which is very stringent, now COVID situation comes, you have to impose the template of this new virus onto this entire operations. So you got to, but the show has to go on, and you have to also deliver on the services that are expected. They are vital. Two, you also have to make sure that you exercise all precautions that you possibly can. So common sense prevails that there are certain things that we have to sort of handle. So let's say first, you would have to ensure that those people who are actually going to be deployed to deliver cash or receive cash have to be physically fit. So every time they come, you got to do the thermal scanning, see that they are quite well, and those morbidities are sort of spared when they come in, when they go out. Then would be that these personnel should also be having certain personal safety equipment, which we know for sure. They must change their clothes every day. They must use sanitizers. They must have a mask. They must have a glove. And the organization is to ensure that they are available not in one-off. You got to give enough so that they can sort of replace it and wash it and clean it and sort of have. So I feel ideally 3 sets of masks could be given to a person, and those should be polyester based, which can be washed and sort of cleaned and give the personal protection taken care of. Then would be that sanitation of every surface that he can possibly. So times together when he enters the vault, when he goes into that, the vault room has to be sort of sanitized, the knobs have to be sanitized, the doors have to be sanitized, the distribution tables have to be sanitized, the PCs that you use, the calculators that you use, and every anything, cash counting machines, all have to be sort of sanitized rigorously. It is not just once, it has to be done periodically. Similarly, the cash handling boxes, the chains, the locks, the vehicle, etc., have to be sanitized, and a good drill has to be kept that this is done at least 2 to 3 times a day. The question of maintaining social distances. To stack contact and passing it to each other. We have maintained distance to this. When you go to the cash van, the very place, 5 people have to, by law, get into that. So the driver, gunman, and 2 custodians and cash boxes all have to fit to that place. So that time you have to tell them, you cannot maintain the social distances, but be careful. Don't look at each other and speak to each other. Avoid any kind of physical contact with each other. Is something that has to be done. And as and when you learn, you got to keep dinning into them that please do make yourself safe and the entire operation safe. Now, one thing that we can never forget, we are operating in a risk-prone area, because even if one person, for example, is tested for corona positive, then the entire set of operations which are taking place from one location have to be sort of sanitized. That's 14 days. So what is the way out? The way out is that you will have to have a business continuity plans. You will have to have that you do not operate from only one location in a city, preferably have multi-locations in the city. Or like for example, today, Delhi NCR, we have a Delhi Vault 1, Delhi Vault 2, we have a vault in Gurgaon, we have a vault, we have a vault. If for any reason NCR operations get contaminated, Sonipat and Ambala and so on. So you have to remember that business continuity plans have to be there because one can grind the entire operation to a halt if you've not done that. Another thing that you got to cater for is you got to have reserves. In this case, reserves do not have to be of a man. You don't have to have a gunman. You don't have to have a custodian. You don't have to have a cashman. You have to have teams which operate together. So that means you have to have a vehicle which has not been contaminated, or if contaminated, can be disinfected and brought back into operation swiftly. You got to have custodians who can do the operation because anybody and everybody cannot do that. For example, as a business continuity plan, in our organization, every person, every clerk, educated person who's a junior manager, executive, etc., know how to handle operations. They can do or even do the cash loading if required. Because this is the contingency, you got to have adequate bench strength. And you is periodically being trained onto that. So you got to have teams per se to replace a team which gets contaminated, different locations if you get contaminated onto that. Another thing is that you got to be ready for that there may be certain other cash management agencies whose operation can grind to a halt. Their load per force is likely to come to those organizations who are well structured, who have thought through the problem that we ready to issue. One, over time, people will have to do that. Two, we can have adequate strength onto that. So if you sort of look at the whole thing, that what are the likely problem that might accrue, and you are ready with this is one thing. And more importantly, I would say, is the spirit. You've got to have it in you that the show has to go on. There will be problems. Some of them you have catered for, you thought through, but there may be others which you haven't. But the question is the will to do and deliver is something that is most important. So a very high level of motivation has to be kept up in the entire team. And that means where the leadership comes in very, very useful and is required. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. It was a real pleasure.
Sanjay?
Yes, sir. It was a real pleasure hearing you, sir. The cash needs fulfilling during the COVID lockdown. I think this is much appreciated. And thank you for telling all the precautions which you have taken for your workforce. That's an example. And something what you said that give them adequate, that matters most, because giving 3 sets, at least they can change over, they can wash it, they can maintain the hygiene, and at the same time, mentally they are comfortable enough to deliver what they are supposed to. Thank you very much, sir. Now we have Colonel Vineet Sahgal. We'll request you to deliver your part, please.
Thank you, sir. Today, what I'll do is I'll just briefly talk about, what could be the possible corporate approach to the unlocking of this lockdown, which has been in place for a while now. While it was very sudden and abrupt when the lockdown was announced by the Prime Minister, and business activity, etc., all came down to a grinding halt. However, contrary to that, the unlocks will probably be gradual, and it'll follow a path of where you know unlocking will happen in those places which are relatively free from coronavirus and its impact, and then move on to uh, places where the government machinery has been able to get this under its. While this will go on, this is the biggest challenge which will be foreseen by everyone will be a lot of conflicting instructions which will be given both by even the central government and the state government. So, for example, we had uh, IT and BT industries were to be opened up for in Bangalore. Karnataka had announced that, but within a day, those instructions were overturned because of certain quarters which had objected to the entire issue of how it could be done. So we will, one, have conflicting instructions. Two, we will have instructions we will possibly be ruled depending on the situation, how it develops. So from a point of view of the corporates, I think what we need to be very careful and need to keep a tab on is how do we keep abreast and updated with the current set of instructions which are around. Sometimes also the instructions that you know essential commodities were to be distributed. Said that no, that will not be the case, and we will only continue to have. These are bound to happen, and we need to make sure that we are on top of it. And I would say not minute to minute, but we are impressed with how this is going to all unfold as we go along. As far as the organizations or the corporates are concerned, this unlocking of situation will definitely have to be phased out. So for example, after all this while, when we go back to work, we will definitely need to figure out how do we make sure that our premises are ready to accept people and we are able to get people back on work. So, for example, let's say all these whiles our HVAC systems have been turned off because the offices were not being occupied. Now we'll have to figure out and plan that how do we get those things properly serviced and we get them to running optimally. We adjust them to how post lockdown scenario, how they should function. So there have been instructions by medical authorities and certain government authorities as the kind of temperatures, etc., which we need to maintain so that we don't we don't have the virus being facilitated for its spread. So systems will have to be modified and tweaked to follow those instructions and to make sure that we take all of those precautions which we need to do. Similarly, other teams like the facilities which will have to go and sanitize the sure that everything is now kept clean. The security teams need to ensure that the people in the office, how do we ensure that we properly check them before we allow them entry back into the premises? What are the records which need to be maintained? SOPs will probably need to be modified, changed, adapted to the circumstances. As you know, as we are predicting, everyone's is not going to remain as what it was pre-lockdown period. These teams, BCP, security, our approach, change our SOPs, change the way we were doing our jobs, so that we are able to optimize. Then in the IT teams getting into the premises maybe after a few initial days when the facilities have been kept ready, where they will need to go and ensure that all the systems are up and running and employees can now get back and start working from offices, etc. So that's a second phase after the initial phase of the maintenance having been carried out. Subsequently, the bulk of the employees, when they need to get back to the offices, that also probably will have to be staggered in a manner wherein initially we get only the folks who are really essential in nature, those who cannot really perform their duties in the current scenario while working from home, those get into the office first, and slowly as things start improving and things start getting more clearer and better, these resources are scaled up and will depend on how the situation and the need is. One thing is very certain that corporates will need to kind of guard against the fact that okay, here is the lockdown period and let's get everybody back into the office, because that really can be very, very counterproductive. And as the virus, as the medical authorities and people that knowledge is saying, is going nowhere. It's that we're trying to figure out a life where we can manage this virus better and we can perform our duties optimally. So rushing back is not something which is going to be something which will be advisable. We will certainly need to ensure that this is done in a manner which is both planned and which fits into the entire sets of instructions which the regulatory bodies are going to be passing back to us. The other aspect is that once we are there back in the offices, we will probably need to ensure that our functioning is now based on these new parameters of social distancing, maintaining hygienic environment, and other such measures which time to time have been delivered by both international bodies like WHO and Ayush Ministry from Government of India. So those will need to be really, really practiced and made sure that we adhere to all of that. Corporates will definitely have to make adequate provisions for protective equipment like masks, PPEs, thermal cameras, infrared thermometers, sanitizers, disinfectants, and all of that what would be needed to run our premises in a safe manner. So we need to now start thinking, because obviously the demand for such like stores is going to be increasing, as what the first speaker Gary had also mentioned. There's going to be something called demand trauma. We need to make sure that as a organization we are on top of it, so that our adequate supplies are ensured, because anything there which we are not able to cater for can directly affect the way we perform functions in our offices and the number of people whom we can get into the offices on any particular given day and time. Specific instructions, policies, procedures, we will have to look at how we run common areas, facilities in the offices. For example, the cafeteria. Now, probably you need to ensure that your meal timings are staggered, so you don't crowd the cafeteria all at once. Maybe the seating has to be arranged in a manner that the social distancing norms are followed. So all of those will need to be, properly thought of, planned, executed by respective teams. Another very important aspect is going to be for companies which provide transport to their employees to commute to and fro from offices, uh, with the uh, norms of social distancing and other security, etc., which needs to be maintained. The capacity of our vehicles to carry employees to and from offices is going to be hugely decreased, coupled with the fact that a lot of public transport is going to take much longer time to get back on track in the manner in which they were functioning earlier. So your the Olas, Ubers, the metros, and other forms of transportations, buses, etc., are going to take much longer to get back on road, and companies will have to rely upon transportation arrangements on their own to get their people to office. And with decreased capacity, that demand is certainly going to go up. So planning probably to meet those issues, etc., will need to be looked at. Sorry. Also, now getting into the office and how we were organized while we were sitting in the office is open area seatings, sitting close to each other. Maybe SOPs probably to be made and ensured that the proper distances as far as social distance concerned are maintained and is so organized that all those options which are required are followed. So all process policies we will have to look at, and they are firstly communicated to employees and then enforced on. That is, how do we modify the way we work? So probably for some time to come, the use of video conferencing, events, and so on and so forth. We will need to look at how do we physically, getting in touch with each other and congregating at one place. So those are the business related. It take some time to restart. We probably will need to ensure that travel is minimized, and we learn to kind of perform whatever tasks which needs to be done virtually, and and we ensure that these travel requirements are reduced a lot. Lastly, while all of this is being done, there can be always a possibility that corporations need support from external agencies to tackle anything which comes about in their offices. So maintaining lists of hospitals, testing labs, and all the other quarantine facilities and related to corona, and updating them regularly, the areas of hotspots, the red zones, and so on and so forth, so that we can ensure that only people who are safe do come in, and in case we need assistance from any of the other agencies involved in tackling this virus, we are able to reach to them with minimal of delay. So all of those will need to be maintained by the business continuity teams, corporations, and will probably need to ensure that business continuity is given. It's given the importance of what it is, and the operational leaders are kept abreast with the latest situations and we modify our practices and the way we are functioning as things unfold. So it's going to be a challenging situation, is a situation where everyone will need to think on their feet and ensure that while we perform our jobs, we also ensure that everyone is kept safe and abreast with what the latest instructions and environment is prevailing at any point of time. Thank you. I will take a pause here.
Thank you very much, Colonel Saigal. Very, very elaborately, brought out corporate approach to planned unlocking. Your complete planning parameters, which you have outlined so intimately, that matters a lot, because not only planning parameters, your operational awareness, your data about the various facilities in your surrounding, and your business continuity plan, it matters so much when you got to unlock and restart. So thank you very much. I'll request Captain S.B. Tyagi sir to take on and give his concluding remarks, sir. Please.
Thank you, Sanjay. The basic idea of this webinar was to understand how things should be unfolding when we put our shutters up, how we should resume our business activities. There are manufacturing plants, there are trading firms, there are public relation activities. Many organizations are resuming business in different sectors, and they need to have a very cautious approach. Even when there was no notice given and we went to lockdown immediately, resuming business is not to be started in a hurry. It needs very elaborate plan. And I remember the reference was made that when we start our activities, say in the offices, the air conditioning units need to be given attention. The AHUs need to be serviced. Such is the requirement that we need to attend to those small things which will not be on sharp focus of all the employees, but those who are involved in resuming the business, the top management and the select team leaders need to pay attention to such areas and such functions. To start with, Gary has given a very broad perspective. What are the threats? What are the concern? And how we can resume? And what would be the impact on the business? So it is making us realize that the situation needs to be handled very carefully, and tomorrow is going to be a different world. And then coming to the service sector, primarily the service sector, which comes to sharp focus, is that there are limitation of doing the business, there are limitation for the customer, and as well as those who provide us essential items. So we can give the order, we can get the grocery purchase from various sites, but we know that someone is going to deliver it to our door. And when we take the delivery, we have to be assured that taking such packages, taking such parcels is okay. These are handled carefully, and these are trustworthy sources. Those who have packaged, parceled, and transported, and ultimately delivered at our doorstep, entire chain of action is trustworthy, safe, and secure. And then another thing which everyone is going to do is going to the ATM and drawing the cash. because even with all the thrust of e-payment and all the facility being easily available, but cash is still required. Many transactions cannot be done through e-payment basis. So we need to have cash. And Colonel Malan has very elaborately made us realize that very careful cash handling and attending to the ATM safety and security, how essential it is, and how we as end user can trust such operations, can easily go to ATM, and we know that these are safe and secure for us. And finally, a corporate take on how to resume business was taken by Colonel Vineet Sehgal. He is, very confident and conversant in what SOP should be followed and how those SOP, wherever it is required, need to be amended so that we focus on how to resume our business safe and secure manner. And with this, I know that we have considered the very appropriate subject, and all the aspects are handled by the experts here. I look forward to further engagement and further cooperation of all the speakers, and probably in a fortnight's time, when things will be more clear, when decision already would have been taken whether lockdown is to be extended or lifted, then we will be in position to analyze what further is required in the sector in which we operate, that is industrial security and safety sector. And we will keep on educating, enlightening, and making aware our members who are security and safety professionals as to how to handle the situation which is going to unfold soon. With these words, I thank all the speakers and feel very indebted and obliged that they have been cooperating, and I request them to kindly continue cooperating with us and make your knowledge available to who seek such wisdom, such experience, which you veterans, ace professionals possess. Thank you very much. God bless us all. Sanjay, you can take further on.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for everybody's participation. I hereby close the meeting, sir. I hereby end the meeting, sir.